As a professional speaker, your value proposition is your holy grail, and your ability to convince outside stakeholders that your message genuinely has value will determine your longevity into the space. With that being said, let's dive into some relevant numbers. Lead generation continues to be the top challenge for 61% of marketers who engage in public speaking as their primary source of income and career, according to Cleverly and HubSpot. It's also estimated that speakers have a minimum of only 3 seconds to get the attention of those who are actively engaged in eliciting speakers, making your message to market fit that much more important. Meanwhile, it's also estimated by Statista that the size of the Canadian speaking market is on the rise. By the end of this calendar year, Statista estimates that it's expected to reach an estimated $448.52 million in revenue, proving that there's plenty of pieces of pie to go around if your messaging is on point. Global estimates also have the speaking market reaching an estimated $608.4 million at a 4.6% compound growth rate between 2024 and the end of the 2029 fiscal year. This, my friends, is all good news for my friend Cam Beaudoin. He's the founder of The Frequent Speaker. He helps leaders, keynote speakers, and other entrepreneurs land stages that most don't even know exist. His goal is to help authors, coaches, and other entrepreneurs consistently get booked and in front of audiences that grows both their brand and their bottom line. And Beaudoin joined me this week to tell me how professional speakers can elevate their lead generation game to get booked for more prospective speeches, and how to create systems which are reliable to make sure this happens time and again. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Cam, if you're ready, my friend, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to learn how you help professional speakers get on bigger stages, my friend. Great to see you. And thanks for a few minutes, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be great. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Look, this is what I do all day long. Just like, how can we get more speakers on more stage? I think that's like such a big part of like the business model that a lot of entrepreneurs or business owners or, professional speakers themselves, like that's what they want. Like, what's the evolution of what their business is? So yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Cam, as the founder of the Frequent Speaker, my friend, you help authors and coaches and other entrepreneurs get on bigger stages and help them grow both their brand and their bottom line, my friend. So, tell me about the intricacies of what you do and what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
Sure. So, Coaches, entrepreneurs, speakers. I mean, one thing that I've noticed that many people who call themselves that, authors as well, you mentioned that, is that they don't realize that they have a business. They're not applying basic business principles to their speaking career, to their speaking habits. So a lot of speakers get into the habit of speaking through trial and error, number one, or they kind of treat it like a hobby. When somebody calls and says, "Hey, can you come speak at my event?" They say, "Oh, sure, I'd love to come speak." And they either speak for free, which is not a bad thing, or they go and speak for a little bit of money, or they don't do it with intention. So the biggest thing that I've noticed is you have to start doing it at volume. You have to do it at scale. You have to start applying to speaking events or doing intentional work around speaking much more than what you normally would do. It's like any other kind of sales or prospecting activity. You have to put in a lot of work. You have to do a lot of message outreach, and that's kind of what we do. We help take that off the plate of speakers, and we do all the outreach and stuff like that for the speaker. So sending out cold emails, connecting with event planners, using my network to see if we can get people booked on stages, and kind of just grow from there. Because once a speaker starts to get that snowball rolling, it starts to build on itself. People see you speak on stage, they want to bring you into their events, and then things start to breathe a life of their own.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, what do you think most speakers miss stages that they could be booked on, my friend? What are some common misconceptions or missteps that speakers make that doesn't get them booked on stages? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
The biggest thing that speakers miss, or the biggest misconception, is that it's easy to get on stage. You have to remember, many stages have 70, 80, 90, 100 applicants to get on one stage. So you sending one email one time to one person, no wonder it's not effective. Like, no wonder you're not getting on that stage. You have to be prepared to follow up. You have to be prepared to do consistent work, and like start really like making it a point to get out there and send these messages, follow up with people, and try and get on a call with that event planner. I think the call is probably the most important step of all this process. It's not filling out a form online and saying, "Hey, I'm all done." It really is, how can I get on the calendar of that event planner and introduce myself as an expert, as the person who is going to change and transform people in their audience? Because that's the number one thing that event planners want. They want their audience to go through a transformation, through an experience, through interaction.
Yeah, so let's talk about establishing relationships with event planners. And what do you think is the key to doing it both consistently and over time, my friend? What do you think is the key to establishing relationships with event planners?
Well, it all starts with the hello. I mean, I know a lot of people who want to rely on their referral network or their LinkedIn profile, things like that. And so you can build a speaking business, but it takes a lot longer to do it that way. What I see as probably the best way to get connected with event planners, start to go and listen to event planner podcasts. Go and build a list of event planners that you may want to reach out to at a later date, and go start just connecting with them, again, through LinkedIn or through email, and just approach them, not as if you're trying to sell something, but go and approach them with something with value. Because as humans, we all want value. Who is this person emailing me? We want to be able to get something of value from that email as well. So trying just to like meet people where they are and getting on their calendar, not trying to pitch on the very first conversation, but just to understand their pain points and the problems that they're experiencing. Trying to understand some of the issues that the audiences that they are hosting, what do they care about, and asking and really being curious about those questions. So I would say that too many speakers are so desperate to get on stage that they completely miss the whole journey of what pain points that an event planner has, what problems that they're trying to solve, and who really they're trying to cater to in their audience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why message to market fit is such an important and vital part of a speaker's outreach plan, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that many speakers just don't have enough data. People who call themselves professional speakers, maybe they'll speak like a lot in June, July, a little bit of August, but then it tapers off until October. Those are the busy seasons of speaking. So what we should be doing is tracking data. how many emails did I send? What type of information worked really well? How even to the level of when you replay your video, because of course you should be recording yourself. Are you watching for audience interaction? Are you listening to your pauses? All this is like something that a true professional would do, right? If you were in sports, if you were playing and you're active, you would go and watch your replays to see if there was any opportunity for you to improve. And these are all things that you can improve that don't take a lot of time. You watch your 40-minute keynote, you listen to your 30-minute workshop, you take notes, and you improve on that next time.
Yeah, and my friend, I'm also curious to ask you about something you recently reposted on Instagram when you said that speakers should really leverage their network of connections, not only to ask for speaking events, but also to ask for anyone in their network of contacts who may book external speakers, because a relationship doesn't always have to be transactional. So I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that for me.
Sure. So what you're really asking about is how do I get a hold of warm leads? You know, how do I get people to introduce me to their audience or their contact list? So really, the best way I can ever say to that is go to a list of people that you regularly interact with and just start and be open about it. You know, I think that we are all very nervous at the beginning to say we're putting ourselves out there, right? And we're saying, hey, you know, I want to go become a speaker. I want to go speak on stages. Do you know anybody who might be interested? If you just ask like that, you're going to get, you know, a 1% of people who are interested in bringing you on, just because they don't know what you're really asking for. But if you go to that same list and you say, hey, I want to go and start to share my knowledge around aviation, right? Like maybe I was a pilot before and I really want to go and start to share my knowledge of how the aviation industry works. Would you know anyone or a company who might be interested in bringing me in for a lunch and learn, a short conversation or a talk? Could you connect with me with anybody who might be interested in getting like teaching their team about stuff like that? You're going to have a much better reception rate. There's going to be so many people who are interested in bringing you in to even just have that initial conversation, because that's where the magic happens. Like that's really where you're going to be able to leverage your warm network.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cam, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, buddy. This year, our friends over at HubSpot and Cleverly, they released a study that said 61% of public speakers or marketers who work in the public speaking space, their number one sort of issue, buddy, was lead generation. So I'm curious, when we talk about lead generation, I'm curious about your thoughts on developing a process and a system to make lead generation easier. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, so I use a lot of tools to start lead generation for our clients. So we go and find lists of conferences out there, and you know, we start building lists of people who that we can reach out to. And another thing is building a list of, you're not gonna be able to reach out to anybody until you know exactly who you want to speak to. I think that's a really big thing. I want to take a moment just to chat about that, to come back to building a lead list before. So really understanding who is it that you want to target, and like we call that your ICP, your ideal client profile. Start to think about where you've spoken before. Think about where you want to go speak. Think about your experiences, your knowledge, where you've worked before. Think of all these types of things, and you can start to build a pretty good profile of about who you want to reach out to. There's lots of tools out there like Apollo. You can use tools like Phantom Buster. These are all just like to pull in lists of names of people who fit that profile, and then you got to build systems in to go and start to reach out to those people and start to say, hi, my name is Cam. I'm just curious to know if you have any opportunities to go speak at an event, or are you looking for someone to come teach your team on how to improve their leadership skills or something like that. And that's the game. Like that's really the outreach that you need to start doing, building a list of people. And I say you need to start reaching out to 100 people per week.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a numbers game, isn't it?
That's all sales. All sales are a numbers game. And I think that we kid ourselves. So once you start to get a little bit of of popularity, right? Once you've started to speak on 3, 4, 5 stages, you think that you're already bigger than you are. And that's just human nature, right? You've been in front of more people than you've ever been before. And you think that you've got a little bit of clout already. People are going to recognize you by name. But that's absolutely not the case. After 5 talks, nobody knows who you are just yet. So you still need to go and put in the time to go and find the names of people to go reach out to, say, I've spoken at this event, I've spoken at that event. I would love to come and share my knowledge to an event like yours. And I'd love to get on a call to understand a little bit more about what your audience is looking for so we can maybe build a transformation together. Would you be open to a 15-minute call this week? And you'll leave it at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you also work with your clients so that event planners already recognize their value before they get on to discovery calls. So tell me about helping event planners already recognize your value and the work that goes into that, my friend.
So one big thing that I see that speakers miss quite often is they don't really have an offer. What they're doing is they're going and saying, I would like to speak, but going to speak is not really an offer. There's no transformation there. There's no end results to that. So you have to be very, very clear on what the end result is of somebody who wants to bring you in to speak. Like, what are they going to get? What's their audience going to get out of that? So really building a really clear idea of that is going to help a lot. Like it's really going to help a lot in you being able to get on stages. So being like really, really specific on what the transformation is, how you can bring it back to people. And that allows you to build your offer, which you can go in and say, okay, here's exactly what we're going to be delivering as part of, or what I'm going to be delivering on stage to your audience. So I think a lot of speakers have to lean into that a lot more.
Yeah, and I know that you're a big proponent of saving a speaker's time by really getting them to understand what event planners are looking for. Because you say it's not about so much about a flashy marketing plan. It's all about timing, and you're trying to save people the time by minimizing the amount of outreach they have to do by understanding timing. So tell me why timing is everything in speaking, my friend.
So many people, and this is not just speakers, many business owners or entrepreneurs, they believe that there's a silver bullet to get into anything. So nobody wants to spend the time and the grunt work and the effort to actually like do the work to get on stage. So saving time is all about working smarter, not harder. You can leverage a lot of AI these days. In fact, we use AI to find new conferences every single day. AI is great at crawling websites now and scraping websites to get more information. You can get a lot of information out there by doing that, but it doesn't mean that you have the benefit of not spending the actual time to send those emails or introducing yourself to those event planners or conference goers. And in fact, one recorded video of you doing a keynote before, or one workshop that you've hosted before, if you're able to send that to a conference a planner, an event planner, something like that, they're going to see you in action. And that is the proof. That is the proof that you've done this before, because the whole thing that we're trying to do as speakers or lead generation is reduce the risk in the mind of the people who want to bring you in and have you speak in front of their audience. So that's my whole idea. That's like my opinion on time saving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to ask you about outreach by email, because a lot of speakers spend a lot of time with their email outreach and positioning on email. So what's your opinion on how to craft a great email outreach strategy, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
So there's only 3 things that you need to remember when you craft an email, any kind of cold email, or this actually works for LinkedIn DMs as well. But the 3 things are, you got to have a really strong hook, you have to be able to provide some kind of value, and you must have a call to action. And let me break those 3 down to you. So a hook can be quite a few things, but it's going to be something that stops the person from their endless scroll. They're going to want to click into that email and read the next line. Every line, all it does is sell the next line to be read. So your hook can be the start of a good story, or it can be something about the prospect themselves. It can be a big data point, but it has to be big and flashy and wow to get people to say, okay, now I'm interested. Let me read the very next line. the value statement. So this can be a 1 or 2 lines long. And what you'll notice is that my emails, when I send them out, they're maybe like 3 or 4 lines. They're not a lot of data. I leave the more information, the big data points, or like the sharing of lots of info to the next follow-up emails, because that's really where people want. All we're looking for the initial email is for somebody to raise their hand and say, tell me more. All right, back to the 3 steps. Number 2, with that value, what kind of value are you providing to the person who's reading that email? This could be a couple of things. This could be insights into the industry that they're not aware of. This could be problems that you know that person is experiencing that they may not be aware of themselves. This could be just like a general empathy towards the problems or challenges that someone's experiencing in their role or with their teams, especially if you're going in for workshops, or maybe an audience, like your audience is experiencing this. That's a really, really great statement, because that shows that you know your stuff. There's a few things in there that are under the covers, right? Like it's communicating that you know what you're talking about. In there, you can also add proof statements. So if you've gone and spoken at any other notable events before, you would add that in there as well, or notable clients or proof, you can add that in there as well. And then finally, you have your call to action. So what do you want somebody to do next? And this is always a question, but it should never be, do you want to book a call? Like, it should never be a direct question like that. It should always be, would you like more information on what I could do? Are you interested in hearing more? Or could I send you a video about how I've done this for a company similar to yours? Then you have an in, because what many people want a prospect to do right away is pay them, right? There's no such thing as lead gen where you send one email and you get paid $25,000. It does not exist. What you want is for someone to raise their hand again and say, tell me more. I'm interested in hearing more from you. So if your call to action ends up being something like, can I send you a video that explains my process a little bit more? Or can I send you an example of where I've worked on this, where I've given this presentation before? Or can I send you an example of my TED Talk? This is going to show you what I could bring to your stage. Those are all really great call to actions that are going to get people just to say, yeah, just send me that video. I'd like to see more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Cam, I'm also curious to ask about you a little bit, my friend. I know that you have a passion for storytelling, and that you're using your passion to help other people sort of fall in love with the process of outreach and the whole speaking gamut, my friend. So tell me where your passion for storytelling comes from and how it helps you develop an understanding of what event planners are looking for, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
So I think humans, all we do is talk in stories. So I was a speaker on disability inclusion and accessibility for a number of years through IBM and afterwards on my own. And the best way that I could communicate the importance of paying attention or focusing on or developing a piece of software for people with disabilities is really all about inclusion to as many people as possible, was through storytelling. I would tell stories about my friends who I know have disabilities, or I would tell stories about an experience that somebody had. And what that does in our brains is it actually allows us to understand and see ourselves in the position of that person. So that was where I really leaned into storytelling a lot. But really, it's in everything that we do, isn't it? It's in this podcast. It's in the emails that I send. It doesn't mean I have to start the story off once upon a time, but it does mean bringing somebody on a journey where they see themselves as needing a guide, which is me. Right. So I want to bring people on that journey so I can demonstrate the flow of time and moving people through a storyline.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cam, I'm gonna share just a little bit about myself, buddy. So I was born with cerebral palsy, and I found out at the age of 9 that I wouldn't walk for the duration of my life because of the severity of my disability. And I also speak on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm curious. Watching from afar, because I live in Canada, buddy, but when I outreach for speaking events in the States surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion, with the current climate that we seem to be under in the States, I'm curious whether you think there's a profitable and sort of successful future for DE&I speakers, and how you think they may have to pivot concerning the current climate we're under in the States, buddy? What are your thoughts there? I'm curious to get your answer.
So D&I speakers, yes, right now everyone has to take a little bit of a backseat. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. People are not hiring DEI speakers as much as they were a few years ago during the pandemic. But that doesn't mean there's no place for speakers who speak on DEI. We just have to go back to business principles. What's the transformation? What are you actually teaching people about? It can't just be a feel good about that anymore, because people aren't buying it. It's not in vogue. It's not on trend anymore. And I don't like using those words, because DEI, inclusion, diversity, it's so important, and especially for many, many different reasons. But unfortunately, like you said, right now with the climate, they're just not like, even if I've heard some speakers who still have DEI in their titles, that they're being removed from like that DEI is being removed from their title, which is really interesting, I find. But there's still benefits to speaking about DEI when you go in and speak. There's no reason why you can't speak about that. But we just need to get back to business principles and say, like, okay, what's the real transformation? So now the transformation isn't about, I want to teach people about the importance of DEI. Now it's more about how to apply inclusion into your organization, within the next 6 months. Because what we're doing there is we're giving value to it. I believe that for a long time there were many speakers who just jumped on the DEI train, and then just because that was the hot thing to do in 2022. So like, people were speaking about it when they had no expertise, they didn't know really, they had no background or knowledge. I remember there were some speakers in accessibility who would speak on disability, and they never really worked in disability, like in the world of accessibility before. They were like the managers of teams who sometimes had to build something with accessibility, and they had no real hands-on experience or opportunities to go and work with people with disabilities. So I always thought that was a little bit strange back then, but that all seems to have gone away, because the one thing that, especially for example, you have a lived experience, and nobody can take that away. So that is the power, that is the superpower that you bring to the table that no one's allowed to remove. So what you can do is you could even bring that to the forefront of your talk and say, I come from lived experience, and let me teach you what it is to cater to or help people with CP, or speak to people with CP. And you could bring that to audiences like schools. You could bring that to audiences like companies that like banks or branches, because banks and insurance companies, big organizations like that, they desperately want to stay relevant because their customer base may have disabilities, and they don't want to, there's I'm going to give you a business term here. The total addressable market of people who need a bank account in the US is everybody, right? Like, everybody needs a bank account. And so there's a maximum number of people who can have a bank account in the US. So therefore, unless it's to new immigrants or students, they don't know who else to pitch to. So therefore, keeping their clients, their existing clients, is the best way to continue to grow and resell things to their existing clients. So you could bring that knowledge in to a bank, to an insurance company, to probably like, I would say also going into, maybe like a fast food chain franchise. I know there's companies out there who do care a lot about DEI still, even though they're not as public about it. So forget about organizations that are fashionable. Like, don't go to the Amazons or Googles, because they are on the whim. Go to a smaller organization. Like, what would it be if McDonald's still does a lot of work on DEI? Go into McDonald's and say, this is how we're going to be able to ensure that every single franchise location is able to be as accessible as possible to people in a wheelchair. That is a deliverable and measurable result that I would say probably a lot of franchise owners and their district managers would be really keen to learn about, because they know it's a gap in their knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kel, I wanted to ask you about bias, because a lot of living with a disability, I'm confronted with bias every day. But you also say that it's prevalent in the speaking industry, and I'm curious to ask you, how do we eliminate bias to get more people of lived experience on more stages? My friend, what are your thoughts there?
So I've worked with many people with disabilities for a long time. I've got many friends with both visible and invisible disabilities as well. And if there's one thing that I see that people who have, especially visible disabilities, that they don't do enough of is they don't take themselves, or that they allow their past experiences of experiencing bias, and they allow themselves to be to be held back by that. Let me give you an example here. They'll probably shine a light on something. So if I was born and I had no disability and I was able to do outreach and just send emails and messages and be fearless in the way that I do outreach, there would be no problem. I would just go and reach out to a bunch of people and say, "Hey, I'm a speaker and I want to get on your stage and talk about whatever." Yet somebody with a disability has so many more things that they need to plan on. Is the event going to be accessible themselves? Is the person going to be able to understand me? Are they going to hold something against me? But the thing is, unless you're going to do all that volume and all that work, then nobody is going to know about you anyways. So it's a little bit of bias is going to exist whether we like it or not, whether we want it or not. So the whole question isn't how do we eliminate bias, is how do we overcome the bias that exists in public today, right? How do we get around that bias? It's because we have to accept the fact that it exists, and how do we overcome it ourselves? So I think, unfortunately, the answer is more outreach, more work, and as soon as more people see you on stage, remember the question of risk. So in an event planner's mind, especially for an event planner who's never worked with people with disabilities before, when they see you on a different stage and they see how excellent you're able to deliver a talk, then that's going to make them want you on stage as well. So it's just about putting in more work, my friend.
You
That's all
know
I can
what?
say.
I always tell myself if I'm bored on a weekend, there's always more speaking outreach I can do, right?
Correct. Right.
Yeah, and I'm curious because based on personal experience, Cam, I've always seen that if I lean into my personal life experience, it makes me more relatable as a speaker. So I'm curious to ask you about maximizing potential and impact by using personal experiences to be more relatable as a speaker, and how important do you think that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So shared personal experiences are one of the biggest drivers that anybody can do in a talk. Let me give you an example of what I used to do when I would speak on stage about disability inclusion. So I would always start the talk and saying, so who are we excluding in our business? And of course, people in the audience are like nobody, we never exclude anybody. But okay, let me talk about your marketing practices for a moment. Do you advertise to children? And they say, well, of course not. Okay, great. So you've excluded an entire group of the population. Okay. Do you advertise to people in China? Well, no, that's not where our business is. Okay, great. So now you've excluded an entire group of people on the other side of the planet. Great. So really, what I want people to understand is where natural exclusions happen, and that we can have a conversation about bias, about disability, about excluding people in a way that's comfortable, because we're going to do it naturally. It's part of human nature. And I want people to, one of my best talks is how do we remove the fear? Because many people don't have day-to-day hands-on experiences with people with disability. So my whole goal in my talks is to get people to understand, oh, okay, dealing as an able-bodied person with people with disabilities, it's not a big deal. It's just part of life. I would again tell another story of when I worked at IBM and I saw my friend who is blind, and he came to our office. So he was a traveling accessibility guy. He would go and talk to all the different offices about accessibility and the value and the benefits of focusing on it. And my boss, my manager, who is an ex-sales guy, he walked up to my friend and said, "Hey, my name's Jim. How's it going?" He stuck his hand in his face and said, "That's it." But my friend who's blind didn't know social cues because he's blind. He never knew that there was a hand outstretched in front of him. So what I witnessed was somebody with their hand outstretched, kind of trying to stare this guy down because he didn't know there's a hand outstretched, and my friend with his guide dog next to him and just being like, "Oh, it's really great to meet you." And I saw like both, there's a mismatch of interaction there. So I fell apart. I ran back to my desk. I opened up my laptop. I looked up YouTube. I said, "How to shake a blind person's hand." And I learned that all you need to say is, "Can I shake your hand?" That one little, can I shake your hand? 5 words to be able to create a better experience for everybody. And like that is something that I know many people don't interact with people who have sight loss or vision impairments. They don't have that experience in their day-to-day lives, so they don't know how to do it. So it's so all that bias is rooted in fear. So if I can just take that fear down and reduce that fear, all of a sudden I witness people get a lot more comfortable about even just talking about the subject, and that level of communication starts to like really break down barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cam, I'm also curious to ask you about the three critical questions that anyone should ask themselves before getting into the realm of public speaking if they want to do it on a more full-time basis. Because I believe if you're not fully invested in this sort of speaking outreach and the whole speaking process, you won't be successful. So tell me about the three critical questions any potential speaker should ask themselves before getting into the field, my friend. What are your thoughts then?
Sure. It's who do you speak to? Mm-hmm. Why do you want to speak to them? And what are you going to say? Really, it really does come down to those basics. And the who has to be so clearly defined at the beginning. I think we are so afraid at the very beginning of starting a project or starting to go speak that we don't want to niche down too much because we're afraid that what might happen is we're going to exclude a whole group of people. And yeah, that's the point, because an expert is always going to be easier to hire than a generalist. Always. If you become an expert at how can I teach women over 60 to stay in their corporate jobs until they retire rather than losing opportunities to, the next guy that comes up in the organization, something like that, right? Like if you can be an expert in that, that sounds so specific. And with 450 million people in the US, there's got to be people out there, even at 1% of people who are interested in that topic. You've still got thousands and thousands of people who are interested in hearing you speak. So everybody needs to realize that their total addressable market, the amount of people who are interested in hearing what you have to say, is so large and so wide that your job is to narrow it down as much as possible so that you can get the maximum out of that group of people. Right. So that's what I'd say. So who do you speak to? What do you speak on? What are you going to say? Well, those are the three big ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of answered my second to last question, which was proof of concept. And I believe it's very important as speakers that you don't try to solve all problems, because then you kind of seem like what I call a utility speaker that doesn't solve any problem. So how do you think we can better define our proof of concept and then niche it down to a message that sells? Because it's important not to be an expert on everything just to get booked. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And it's so easy as speakers because our natural inclination is I want to go and teach about everything I know to everybody. And everything you know might be the pasta sauce that your grandmother cooked and you love it and you want to go bring that into there. And you're trying to bring some like talks about food and cooking and business principles to a talk on leadership in AI. And you don't need to do that. There's absolutely no reason why you need to bring up all these various topics in one talk. Really, we learned this in high school, right? One main point, three supporting arguments, and then you're closed. That is still the essentials of a really great talk. And you can see this in the best speakers in the world. I was fortunate enough to see Tony Robbins live in person. He spoke for 2.5 hours. And yeah, he had a few more supporting arguments, but he had one big point that he was trying to make. And it's do more, be more, grow bigger, take more risk. And that was what his whole thing was about, get out of your own way. That was the big topic. And he had maybe 5 or 6 supporting arguments. But if one of the highest paid speakers of all time can do that, then why don't you, right? That's what it all comes down to. A good keynote, a good workshop shouldn't even really solve any problems. It should make a person realize that they have more problems that they need to do more work on themselves. You're not going to be able to change somebody's life in 45 minutes. You might be able to do a little bit of work. You might be able to highlight or shine some light on some issues that they may have. But really, the whole goal of a keynote really shouldn't be for you to go out and share knowledge. It should be to get you to start a transformation that you can then complete at a later date, hopefully through somebody in the crowd, and get them to continue the journey with you. Because if you've really impressed somebody, if you've helped them uncover problems that they didn't have words for, that they couldn't articulate themselves, then they will definitely want to continue on that journey from you and buy more from you, bring you in to come speak to their company, hire you for a half-day training, hire you for a full-day training, something like that. And that's where the big money is. That's where the continuous education, where the continual support really comes from.
Yeah, and before I ask you my last question, you sparked me to ask just one follow-up, and it's this, going through this speaking gamut myself, Cam, I've really come to understand the importance of a value proposition statement and discovering pain points, because I believe that they're so intimately interconnected. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on how discovering pain points and aligning it with a value proposition statement are interconnected. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, sure. Would you like to do an exercise? We could maybe break down your value statement, and I could maybe give some advice on where I'd change it, or if there's any improvements to make. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my value proposition statement is this, buddy. I help organizations build inclusive hiring practices to get more people with disabilities hired with minimal efforts.
Amazing. So you've got, I help organizations, improve their hiring practices to bring people with disabilities into more organizations. Did I get that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So what I would say is that organizations can be anybody. There's over 1 million organizations in the United States, like registered companies. So focusing more on who, like it could be manufacturing companies, tech companies with over 1,000 people. The more specific you can get in that is going to really cater in. And like I said before, don't worry if it sounds like you're excluding a bunch of companies. It doesn't matter, because the toilet paper manufacturer of Nebraska doesn't know who you are. So when they see tech firms or something like that, who do you really want to go talk to? Like, if you looked at the past, say 10 talks that you gave, what's the commonality there? Like, what can you drill down into even more? Maybe I'll ask you that. Like, what did you see as the patterns in the past couple talks that you've given?
Yeah, the pattern is a lot of, I'll use the last one I gave, because, pattern when I talk to businesses, they're like I didn't know this was so easy to hire people with disabilities. You've really helped us understand it's sort of a competitive advantage rather than a deterrent or an additional cost. So I help organizations understand the competitive advantages of hiring folks with disabilities and how it can improve both their productivity and the morale of the entire organization.
I love that. And you said one really key word there. So simplifying language is an art, right? So the more we can simplify and remove jargon, remove buzzwords. In fact, I was just speaking with a speaker earlier, and he had, energetic teams through buzzword. It was just like so much like extra fluff. But you said a really good word there. I think it was the word easy. And you could probably go in and say, so give me more about your target market. Who is the last conference or company that you spoke to?
Yeah, it was a company called Coupa. They're a software company that brings together apps and technology companies to make sort of the buying process more seamless.
Well, what if your value statement became something like, tech companies love it when I show them how easy it is to hire people with disabilities. That improves their bottom line.
That would work. Yeah.
See, like what we're doing here is I'm using that word easy. So tech companies, I'm being very clear with who I want to speak to. So tech companies see how easy it is to hire people with disabilities. Oh, wow. Okay. So it's actually easy. I had no idea, to improve their bottom line. So they've got something for everybody there, because that is a pain point. So the big thing I hear here is that, like, what's the pain? So originally I have to be an HR person and I have to realize there's a pain around this. And so is the pain around the bottom line? Is the pain around hiring people with disabilities? Because I will guarantee you that there's many companies out there who have no idea that it's hard or easy to hire people with disabilities. They just don't know. They just don't do it. So really highlighting that pain. So maybe you can give me more about like the pain. So when you speak to companies, do they already have that pain, or are you creating the pain when you go in and speak with them?
Yeah, a lot of it is I'm brought in because a lot of companies don't understand sort of the business benefits of hiring folks with disabilities. Because one of the biggest taglines that I use to get speeches is that 80% of accommodations for folks with disabilities, if you hire them, cost less than $500. And one of the biggest questions that I always get when I finish a keynote or a speech is, how much money is this going to cost me? So what I've done is I've integrated it into the speeches that I give, because it's a question that I'm always given. So I kind of answer the pain point before I know it's coming.
Amazing.
And it seems to be working for me. So
I would lean into that so much, because you're absolutely right. Most accommodations cost less than 500. I've even heard that like a good 75 costs less than $100. We're talking about like an ergonomic keyboard for people with carpal tunnel, and we're talking about an adaptive chair for somebody who has back spasms. Like, we're not talking about retrofitting an entire workspace, or like telling people they have to work from home, or allowing people to work from home for their entirety of their time, which is a situation sometimes, but it's not a lot. So lean into, I would just make that your value proposition. So something along the lines of, I can teach your tech company, fix that one a little bit. So I can teach your tech company how to provide accommodations for 80% of your workforce for less than $500. Like, just make that your value prop. Because imagine if you were at an event, like after a conference, you've given your workshop, you've given your keynote, and you're going and meeting people, and they're like, "Oh, I missed your talk. Like, what do you speak on?" And if you can't deliver that value statement in one breath, it's not about how long, it's one breath. And you'd be like, "Oh, I spoke on how tech companies, can fix their accommodation problems for under $500. Whoa, my gosh, I'm an HR person. You got to tell me about that, because I need to hear more." That's money. Like, right there is money. The more you can add stuff in there like that. Another thing is like adding a time bound thing. So, like I can show, let's change away from tech companies. I don't like that anymore. Like, I can show senior HR. I can show head of HRs. I can show heads of HR how to fix their accommodation problems for less than $500 if you give me one call.
Yeah, that's a hook, right? Yeah,
that's a huge hook, but that's also your value prop, right? Like, so you're at an HR conference. Sure, you got some people in from the audience as well, and then someone, like I said, walks up to you and says, like, "Oh, I missed your talk. I was really curious. Like, what do you speak on?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm a speaker. Yeah, I teach tech firm HR heads how to, accommodate everybody in their company for less than $500. Do you want to set up a call to learn more about it? Oh my God, please tell me more." That's the kind of thing that we want. We want people to be like, "Oh my God, that's so interesting. Tell me more." So your hook and your value statement can absolutely be the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Cam, first and foremost, thank you for that tutorial, my friend. I'm going to use some of that. Okay.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah.
And Cam, my final question is, when you look at the work that you're doing and the legacy you're building, how do you want that to be remembered when this is all over for you, my friend? And I always like to end my podcast by asking about legacy, because I believe that life is about leaving a trail of impact for the people that come after us, and really living in the moment. So, my friend, what does living in the moment and what legacy really mean to you, my friend?
Well, I have a mission. I want to help 10,000 speakers make $10,000 from stage. So that means that's going to be like $100 million mission. And I think that's big. That's big and it's scary. And I don't even know if I can solve that in my lifetime. Definitely not alone. So I think that means like there's a bigger business, a company. It's not just Cam and his team doing lead gen. I've got a team of 4 people. They're all helping me out with this. But it probably means, 100 employees or more, because $100 million doesn't just materialize in 5 years or 10 years. That's a lifetime journey, to get to that, at least in career wise. So when I think of what legacy looks like, it's definitely that. It's definitely 10,000 speakers, $10,000 stages over my lifetime. That's it.
Well, that's simple and straight to the point, my friend. And you're off to a running start in accomplishing that goal, my friend. But before I say goodbye to you today, my friend, I'm curious if people want to get connected to the frequent speaker or yourself personally. What's the best way they can do that?
Well, the best way actually is to go to thefrequentspeaker.com/let's have this conversation. I've set up some content there for you. So I've got my tips on how to do cold outreach, how to compose emails. I've just got a couple of pages there for you. So anybody who's listening can go to thefrequentspeaker.com/let's have this conversation. And you can reach out to me there. That's probably the best place. But my most active social media is LinkedIn. But definitely, let's connect over email and grab some of those free resources. They're totally free for anyone who's interested in speaking. Just go to that website.
Fabulous. Well, I Cam, as a professional speaker myself and someone that's always looking to add value, my friend. I thank you for the good work that you do and for engaging in conversation with me this morning. It's most appreciated, my friend.
Thanks, man. This is great. I appreciate it. You have a great day, and it's great to hear from you.